you and I said it was a house of cards. Really? So I lied to you? No, I didn't lie to you. And you know what? Miss Elamazzi wants to stand up here and say they owned up to what they are. So what is she trying to say? She trying to teach you to blame him because he chose not to testify? That's exactly what she's doing. She's commenting on the defendant's right to remain silent. Because you know what? They're ticked. Because all they had was a bunch of hooks and crooks to come in here and try to put him at the scene. And they know you're smart enough and bright enough and intelligent enough to see through it. They can't put him there. Oh, it's because Keith Johnson and Michael Lucky decide to crush the car. Nowhere do you ever hear Detective Sayers say that Larry Jenkins had anything to do with getting rid of the Chrysler. Who got the Chrysler? Chazelle. Bula. Who was she dating? Who was she living with or was living with her? Keith Johnson. And who's with him in a separate car, getting rid of the white car? Michael Lucky. He is not anywhere near that, but they want to put him right in the middle of it. And how now, when they don't have anyone other than hooks and crooks that can tell you that he's involved, they decide to use Facebook. They decide to say, he's such a bad guy, he changes his name. He's such a bad guy, he doesn't even put his right name on his phone record. Well, fine. He doesn't put his right name on his phone records. He doesn't put his right name on this. The point is, they can't even prove he's using that phone. Oh, wait, yes, they can. But isn't this interesting? They've got the video that's the day after the offense, at 5 o'clock in the morning after the offense, on the 24th. And then they've got this picture before the offense happens. This picture. This is supposed to make you just know that he's on that phone and that he's the one that's there. So we'll get back to that in a minute. They want to make you feel like he's the bad guy. Those are the good guys because they came in and told you that they rob and steal and hurt people for a living. Our king tells you that the reason he's here is because Larry Jenkins turned him in for 3 offenses that he's facing in this courthouse, engaging in organized criminal activity and 2 aggravated robberies. That's why he's testifying against him. And he told you, you lie against me, I'll lie against you. That's it. It's penny in a pound. They'll do whatever they need to do. So he's good because he admits he's a crook, but he lies on people because they lie on him. Dominique gets up here and tells you, yeah, he wants to deal with Club Fed. He wants to get a better cut. He admits it. He buys stolen property. He gets extradited when he comes back from Paris that apparently pays with his drug sales. And he's a good guy, but he's going to tell you that this guy comes up to him for no reason at all and just has a conversation with him about a murder. That's how they put him there. Because guess what? One of the ways you figure out who's on a phone, since everybody passes their phones around, good Lord, half the time I can't even find mine. Somebody's always on it. You find out if they're actually talking to a person. So what does the person tell you who does all the mapping? There's not even a conversation. It's a phone number calling a phone number, and that's supposed to make it him? No. When you asked Detective Sayers, did you even check to see if it was them having a phone call? Did you even ask Chazelle if she called Larry Jenkins or if he called her? No. So you don't even have anything to back up that anything happened on that phone or that he's the one on that phone. So they've got to find a way to put him on that phone. They've got a way to get the phone to follow the car but put him with it. So they bring Jamal Hardy up here. Yes, Janelle says he's sitting there right by a car, but not the car they want him to say he's sitting by. He's sitting by a different car. But he sees the white Chrysler, and he says there's a whole bunch of people in it, but I don't know who is in it. Maybe he's telling the truth. Maybe he's lying. Maybe he doesn't want to be as big a snitch as they want him to be. Maybe he just pretends he doesn't know because he doesn't want to tell. Because you know what? Being a snitch out on the street isn't a nice thing to be either. You can get in trouble for that stuff. So maybe he just decides he tells what he wants to tell, but he doesn't tell it all. But they still don't have him in the white Chrysler or in the dark car that the gentleman who was on the street, sitting on his patio, drinking a beer and watching TV saw. He saw a white car and a dark car, and he saw a bunch of people around it, but couldn't tell who they were. And he wasn't the only one. I mean, you've seen the video. You know something happened in that driveway. You know what happened to Andre Emmett. But what they want you to do is take what other people say, people who you wouldn't trust, to come near your house because they might steal your stuff. People who would probably hurt you if you wouldn't let them. But they want you to trust that what they say was told to them is enough to go along with what you hear from the good people of that neighborhood and what they saw and what that video shows to find him guilty of something. That's how they want to make it beyond a reasonable doubt. What's on the video, what these people over here who tell you he says, put with what the other people say. Now the people who wanted to help him, the DJ that found him in the street and didn't even know it was his friend, they told you exactly what they saw. I mean, don't you think he wishes he knew that that was his friend when he went over and touched him? You know he did. You could tell he was emotional about it. But he didn't even recognize him. But he felt bad. But he told you where he went, and he told you what he always did. The guy that was sitting on the porch, he told you exactly what he saw. He said, I wish I could have identified him, but there's not enough lighting out there. I couldn't tell. But I know there was a dark car and a white car. And that's what we kept hearing. When Detective Sayers got up and testified, he testified, I believe that the white car and the dark car were working together. And I believe there were other people in those cars. But I don't know who they all were. And I can't tell you who was riding in what car. I mean, Detective Sayers at least admits when he doesn't know something and tells you what he does know. Does he believe that that phone was being used by Larry Jenkins? Of course he does. Because he's the one that filed the warrant to get him arrested, to get him in here. So of course he believes it. But does that mean it's proof beyond a reasonable doubt? No. That's probable cause. He's got probable cause to believe that he may be involved in this. He gives it to a grand jury, and the grand jury says, yeah, there's probable cause. It's up to you people to decide if it's beyond a reasonable doubt. Yes, we know Andre Emmett lost his life that day. September 23rd, 2019. He was too young to lose his life. He was too young to be away from his children, to leave his mother. Somebody was robbing him. Now, one of the witnesses, R. King Jones, keeps talking over and over and over about the fact that he says Larry Jenkins is the one. You hear the first two sayings in the tape, and you can take the tape back and you can watch it and listen to it all you want. The first two things that are said, he says, are both Larry Jenkins. But I asked him, when you talked to the DA, you kind of told it a little different. And poor Mr. Taylor didn't know it, but according to our King Jones, he's a big fat liar. Because he says he never said it that way. But in his interview, I said, you said one guy was Pierre Love, which you'd already heard about from Detective Sayers. One guy was Keith Johnson. And I said, I think he even may have been thrown in Mr. Lucky. Oh, no, I never would have said that. No. See, one of the things you got to learn is sometimes in the neighborhoods, people don't want to rat out certain people. They don't mind ratting out other people that maybe they don't like. They don't want to rat out people that they actually have a bond with. So just because you're sitting up there and you raise your hand and say, I'm going to tell the truth, doesn't mean you're always telling the truth. That's true. So, that comes down to that witness credibility we talk about. You can believe some of what some people say, all of what some people say, or absolutely none. But when you wash those people out based on whether or not they're saying it because they're getting back at someone, or they're saying it because they think they're going to get a deal, or they're saying it in a certain way because they just don't want to talk about it, but they're doing what they're going to do just to get through the whole situation, like Mr. Hardy, who didn't really want to be here. You got that sign pretty fast today. He did not want to be here. You can set those people aside, and then you look at everything else. You look at what Detective Sayers has told you. You look at what the people out there on the street told you, and you look at what you can really prove. And one of the other things you look at is what we call circumstantial evidence. Okay? That means, does it fit? Does it look right? Okay? So that's where you go back to that video, and you look at the video. And you look at what you can see of the people. Now, you can't really see them when they're beside the car, but you can hear voices. And you can tell that the voices aren't all exactly the same, because they kind of overlap. So it's like one person's talking, another person's talking, and someone else is talking. And part of it may be that you're hearing Andre in the background a little bit too. But then you see people running. And so when you're seeing people running, you want to talk about a house of cards. They're very proud of this pretty picture. They're very proud of those shoes and that outfit that they've got Larry Jenkins wearing about an hour and a half before they say he's supposed to be standing in a driveway shooting a man. And ladies and gentlemen, those shoes light up. They stand out in the dark. And those aren't the shoes he was wearing. Ladies and gentlemen, they want you to believe he was there because they charged him, they indicted him, and he's in front of you. They want you to believe he was there because he hangs out with people like the ones you met up there. And because those people know him and they're talking about him. And the streets talk. That's what Sayers told you. The streets talk. That's how after a year with Michael Lucky and Keith Johnson under indictment, all of a sudden Larry Jenkins gets added to the mix is because the streets talk. But ladies and gentlemen, you don't have to listen to the streets. You can look at the facts and the evidence given to you. And you can decide for yourself whether or not they prove to you beyond a reasonable doubt that Larry Jenkins had anything to do with a capital murder. Whether he was the shooter or whether he was a party, you still have to decide that he did something. Ms. Alamazi sits up here and says to you, I gave you an example of law of parties. I never went to the crime. So is it now that he's like the mastermind and he's standing off in some other place way away from the car, or he's sitting in the car waiting for them to get back and he's calling the shots? Where all week long they've been saying he's the shooter, now they're changing their tune? Or is he sitting at home answering the phone? What exactly are they going to change their strategy to get you to believe that he's a party to this? When they stood up here the first day and said, he's the shooter, amen, that's it. because you can't even build it, because you can't even figure out which way you're going. Ladies and gentlemen, you're going to have to decide. Are you just going to decide that he did it because they want you to? Or did they really prove it to you beyond a reasonable doubt? Can they prove that he's a party? Can they prove that he's the shooter? Can they prove that he had anything to do with it? The reason you have lesser included offenses on that charge is because there is a legal way you deduce whether or not it is a flat out not guilty. If the 12 of you that end up going back in that jury room cannot make a decision as to whether or not you believe that Larry Jenkins is either a party or a primary actor like the shooter in the capital murder, you can go to the next step, which is murder. And then again, the instructions will lead you then to aggravated robbery, but you know at the very end, if you can't all agree beyond a reasonable doubt to any of the offenses, the answer is not guilty. Ladies and gentlemen, what happened to Andre Emmett was wrong. It was bad. But there's nothing good and there's nothing helpful by giving them a guilty verdict on capital murder on Larry Jenkins simply because he might have been involved. Or they want him to be involved, but they just can't prove it. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to ask you to find him not guilty because he's not involved.